Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to come again and again and again to Ljubljana. For many years I was always happy that you could protect the city rather well, as Luca said, but now I have some problems to become happy when I see what is happening here in Slovenia, like what has happened in Austria since 50 years. So I have changed a little bit my presentation, made it a little bit shorter, just starting with some simple slides about climate. Climate is the relationship between space, atmosphere, and ecosphere. And the arrows are not linear interrelationships. So if they are not linear, we have a chaotic system, very difficult to understand, and all three parts are open systems. So it's very difficult to control it. This is one of the problems we are facing. And this is the situation. On the left side, we are putting more and more CO2 and other gases into the atmosphere. And on the other side, on the right side, you see the system has become a positive feedback after 1940. Positive feedback means that it is self-strengthening. So if something is happening, then it becomes even stronger. So we have not only the damage in the atmosphere, we have also the damage on the ground and so on. And these are parts of the positive feedback. And this is very difficult to control. To control positive feedback, it is necessary to implement a negative feedback, which works faster and at least as strong as the positive one. If you can do it, you can't control it. And this, I think, is the illusion in the European Union. These are the systems. The space is more or less endless. The atmosphere is not very much, only about 10 to 20 kilometers. And the ground, which is necessary for our life, is only about 40 centimeters. If it is a tire of a car and you drive 250 meters, you have lost all humus. And the atmosphere is not more than 0.1 millimeter on the tire. Just to get an impression how sensitive this system is. And in this system, we are interfering with our technosphere, with concrete, fossil fuel, damaging the nature, exploiting the nature, and convert it into money. And money is not a part of nature. It don't exist in nature. It is an artificial product in the brain of humans. And to increase this money, you must believe it. My dog is not stupid enough to believe the money. If I give him 100 euro, he said, okay, I am not very much interested. I would like to have some meat, sausage, or whatever thing, so he knows what is the real effect. Only people with our neocortex, you can cheat in this way. This, I think, is very much to take into account. And this is the development, as you see, and the hopes of the IPCC and the EU. You see, this is the development, and if we make one decision today, let me see, to build a road or to build a house or whatever it is, it has a duration of use for the next 100 years. And if it is a wrong decision, you have the effects for 100 years. You have the initial effects, and then you have the continuous effect all the 100 years. And this is very much forgotten in all the discussions and the hopes. This is the European program. It is a very nice story. But if I look to the reality, and this is my business, scientists have not to look to the dreams. Well, if I'm a dream scientist, but I'm a natural scientist and technician, so I have to look to this one. And you see what is happening here. This is energy, the real development concerning CO2, and this is transport from between 1990 and 2019. So you see, it is the only part of the whole system which grows up. Even we make this kind of programs. If you switch on my microphone again, can you hear me at the end? Okay. Then I don't need a microphone. So you see here is happening the total different. What was the declaration in the 80s and so on, and it goes totally in the other direction. So, and it is very interesting. This is the change between 1990 and 2017. And if we look where is Austria, Austria is about here, and where is Slovenia is about here. Instead of going down, we have increased the emission of CO2 by about 100%, in Austria about 70%. And if you go a little bit deeper into this data, then you will see this. There are a lot of tricks to keep it down. Because you make a real analysis, then you recognize it is even worse than this picture shows. This second term in my lecture is the paradigm. The paradigm is what is the working method, what we believe, what is our narrative, the stories we tell, and what we don't question. And this paradigm change happened, for me at least. I was not eager to make a paradigm change, but I recognized some conflicts in the logic of transport science or transport work. If a paradigm change happens, the meaning of terms is changing. The working method is changing. The view, the value system is changing. This is a paradigm change. A very simple and very well-known paradigm, which is not so difficult like our paradigm, because there are not so many people included, is the change in the look where the Earth is. Is the Earth the center of the globe, or is the Earth one of the planets and around the sun? And this was a very, I would say, dangerous development from the people in the Middle Age, and they were endangered because when you change the position of the Earth, then you change also the position of the powers afterwards. And this is happening here too. So these are the pillars of the traditional transport planning. We believe that mobility is growing when the people buy cars and have more cars, so they are becoming more mobile. The second one is our personal experience. When we move from one point to the other fast enough, then we save time. And we say, okay, if we build fast transport system, then we will save time. And this is the basis of all the calculations. And the third one is freedom of choice. So if we have more cars, we have more choice. We build and invent more different vehicles, so the freedom is increasing. This was the best practice situation in the 60s. In the 60s, the best practice was to convert everything into a car world, to build a world for cars. In Vienna, this church has been removed to make space for cars in the 4th district. You don't see it anymore today. And the city has planned to make motorways along the 2nd ring road. This is the inner ring road. Some people who have been in Vienna, this is the city center, and this is the 1st ring road. And this is the 2nd ring road, and it was planned by planners. I wasn't at this time planner, it was 1969. I had done something, I make the pedestrian zone planning in this area, because no planner wanted to do this crazy thing at this time, because everything was toward cars. And the tram lines should be removed in Vienna on the surface and be replaced by underground, metro, and buses. And we could stop it in 1974. But finally, there was a big opposition from the people in Vienna against these motorways, and we were successful. So Vienna had no motorway along the Gürtelstraße, but we have underground, above ground. It is a U6 line. This is the change, and Vienna was very lucky to have a brave mayor who has made this decision. So this is the narrative and the background of it. The World Bank, this is a diagram from the World Bank. This means if people are increasing their wealth with money, then they buy cars. And there's a close relationship with increasing wealth of the people, you have more cars. This is the basic principle. What is always forgotten are these two lines. I'm not going deeper into this issue, and this is the forecast from a colleague of mine, Professor Leutzbach, who has made it in his textbook. This was the forecast in Germany that Germany will have a maximum motorization of about 62.4 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. We are today about 600. And you see, this is the traditional working method. We make the forecast and make always a red carpet for the cars. Different kind of red carpets. This is traditional transport planning. So they count cars on some cross-sections, and if there are more cars coming, then they say, okay, we must build a new road, and we must build a new detour road. We have many villages and cities where we have 3 detour roads, because each detour road is used as an access road for buildings and something like that. And then we build the next road. Crazy. You not. Slovenia is, in this case, much more clever, or I would say lucky. But I fear they are running now into the same gap. So, these are interesting structures, because transport systems change, of course, structures. I will very soon tell you why. You know it very well. This is the historical city there. You are not becoming tired when you go through the cities, but as soon as you are going, this is a little bit better here. This is, I would say, 19th century, and these are the new parts of the cities. And you see, this is much more interesting and much more vital and much more human scale. It's very easy to find it. When I am a planner, I just go through the city or through the village or municipalities, and when I find people on the street, I know, well, the city is alive, walking. And if I don't see people on the streets walking, well, this is a dead part of the city. They're very simple. It's like a doctor is checking your blood pressure, and if you are alive, you have some blood pressure. And if you have no blood pressure here, this is a very simple tool, which I am using since many, many decades. Okay, and then you have built this kind of wonderful motorway around the city. You know it, and the problem is that we are using data. And very often the people don't know, even my professors, I think it was, I had a lecture in the university about 30 years ago. They wanted to invite me for my crazy ideas. And I asked the professors, what are data? Everybody is working with data. It's a very complex situation to produce data. Data don't exist. No number exists in nature. Have you ever seen 1 or 5 or this kind of number in nature? No, they don't exist. We produce this in our brain, and then we believe it. Very interesting situation. So the data is always a kind of a picture from behavior. So we are observing behavior, and if the behavior is changing, then we recognize the section of the behavior. As I have seen you before, the people had the narrow view to cars. And if you have the narrow view to cars, then you analyze the behavior of car users. Very simple. And what is interesting, why this behavior is happening, the behavior is always the effect of structures. And this question mark are very important, very much important, sorry. This question mark are very much important because we must know how these are produced. So we produce by the structures the behavior, but it's necessary to know how people react on structures. And the second one is how do we produce out of the behavior data. Your body has a certain behavior, and the doctor is interested on one indicator, which is the temperature, for example. This is not your body, but this is an indicator which tells the doctor if you are healthy or not. And the same we are also doing. So we are looking to the data, and we have looked very many decades only to the cars, because it was very fascinating. This is one of the cities I had as a patient in 1975. Today it is a pedestrian zone, but it was a very hard fight, and I need some very good partners in politics and in the administration. This is Eisenstadt. It's a small city, only 10,000 inhabitants, close to the Hungarian border, but it changed. So if transport would be a science, A science means that you have a very good practical and theoretical background, which make a very good forecast. And as soon as you discover that your hypotheses don't reproduce the reality, you can throw the hypothesis away. So if transport would be a science and they would build roads and they would recognize, congestion is appearing because they have promised that the road is built to prevent congestion, then the forecast is wrong. And they should go back to their own sources and analyze what is wrong. But they haven't said, but they have recognized, like construction engineers, if we don't bear the building, they make it bigger. And this is exactly the linear thinking of traditional engineering. And so they are increasing the problems from time to time. This is happening also with traffic accidents, noise, air pollution, and so on and so on. The question is, why have the people accepted and the professionals have accepted this crazy behavior? We kill every year 1.2 million people in traffic accidents globally and hurt about 20 to 60 million people in traffic accidents every year. So this is, I would say, a quantity like the normal virus is doing it. This is the situation today. You can read the other things here. And this is a very interesting experience. I was in China about 40 years ago. And at this time, it was very easy to cycle in China. And I had a very good friend. He is a very famous zoologist, biologist in China. He make TVs and something like that. I know him from the Club of Rome. And this was our trip to the city center. He lived about 12 kilometers away from the city center, and this is China, 2005. The air pollution is terrible. They have built 5 motorway rings around the city, every 2 kilometers about. And they have a totally congested city since this time, a terrible situation in the air pollution, but they make very nice green areas in the motorways on the second or third level. There are a lot of slides. And this is exactly how the Chinese have introduced our kind of transportation principles. And then they are complaining and they don't know why. Because they don't understand what is happening on here. So, and Germany is the same. You see, Germany had about 70% of trips on public transport, because this is the share of trips on cars. And it went up, you see, in the 60s and 70s. Today, Germany can do whatever they want. They are not increasing their share of public transport to more than 17%. And the European Union makes the same. They spend billions and millions to make all this nice, I would say, symptom treatments, but they don't change the system at all. This is the problem, because if you don't understand the system behavior, you make the wrong treatment. So this was the belief. I became professor in 1975, and this was one of my teaching. Because I believe at this time that increasing motorization means increasing mobility. And then we make a survey because I was able to convince the city municipalities that we should introduce cycling in Vienna as a future mode. And the responsible politician said to me, well, cycling is nothing for Viennese. And also not for me, because I had to cycle in the World War II from Vienna to Prague, and this was enough for me. But it was not enough for me. So I was cycling at this time, and what we got here is a very interesting diagram. It shows that it is increasing. This is length of cycle lanes in the per habitant, and this is share of cycling. And this diagram tells us 2 stories. One story tells us that if the people buy cars, the mobility is increasing. And the second story tells us if we build cycle lanes, the mobility is increasing. And if I combine these 2 logical systems as a scientist, then we have a maximum mobility if the people buy cars and we build only cycle lanes. This happened to me in 1975, and I was laughing like you. in this case, it is necessary to try to understand what you are doing. What are we counting here? We are counting here trips in public space. And the question is, why are people appearing in public space? Because they try to compensate the deficits of their home at the destination. If you are in a wonderful environment, you don't need to make forced waste on public space. So this is a question of urban planning. If you organize the situation in a very nice way, as you see it in the city center, the people had to do it in former times. They had not to drive very far, because everything they needed was within the walking distance, had to be within the walking distance. Working places, culture, friends, enemies, whatever you want, local enemies. So this was life enough. I grew up in a village across these mountains, just between the border of Austria and Yugoslavia, and we had everything in the village. I grew up in a farmhouse with 4 generations. In World War II, there were I was the only one. All the others were in the age over 60 at this time. But we ran a farm, and the farm was okay. And there were no shortage of food. We had produced enough food, not only for us, but also for the poor people from Villach. They didn't have enough food, so they came to the countryside and asked for food. But it was a war. And the war was even at home there. But we were not concerning food and something like that. Short. So this has been solved. The reality looks like this one. If car trips are increased, all the other trips are decreasing. Because the number of trips is globally more or less the same. The average number of trips per person per day is about 3 trips per person per day. So if you have a city of 1 million like Ljubljana, then you have about 3 million trips generated by the city itself or citizen itself. And it depends on the structures, you know it already, what will happen. If you make a structure for cars, the people will drive cars. If you make a structure for pedestrians, very simple, if you know it. And it is even simpler. This is not nice, but it has happened now, just now, because when you know this, you cannot make any forecast anymore. You cannot say, okay, car traffic is increasing. No, you must decide what kind of mode you would like. Would you like to have an environmental friendly mobility for pedestrians, cycling and public transport? Then you must make an environment for cyclists, pedestrians and public transport. It is not interesting whether the people like cars or drive around with the cars. You cannot count cars, which is the normal principle and thinking of traditional engineers, as I was also one of them, and I was proud in the 60s. This was the normal situation at this time. So the politicians must also specify what kind of model split they want. And if they don't know, they have to ask for targets, climate targets, for example, climate targets, spatial planning targets, understanding and executing laws under these conditions, and so on. So it is not easy anymore to say, okay, we have 20,000 cars and it's increasing. I go back 10 years before, we had 10,000, now we have 20,000. In 10 years after, we will have 30,000 cars. No. The doctor would recognize, well, you have now 37 degrees, or 38 degrees, and a week ago or yesterday you had only 36, which is normal degrees. Now you have 38, and then they extrapolated, and they said, well, in 3 weeks you will have 45 degrees. But the doctor has recognized there's no payment anymore from this patient because he has died in between. And this is exactly what we are doing. So, okay, this is very simple. This was known before, but it was not seen and not recognized. This is the space used for slow movement. You see slow movement, 30 kilometers an hour and 50 kilometers an hour. This is pedestrians, this is cyclists, and this is public transport. And this is the car. And you see the car needs more space only for parking than the others for all kind of mobility. And if we take care on our environment and we don't like to destroy it, it's not allowed to build anything for cars. Very simple. You don't need very much science. You see it simply. And we know it. It is interesting. You find it in the old master plans from the 60s already, but it was not seen. The second one is the same one. This is the energy consumption per unit of time. These are the pedestrians. These are the pedestrians, these are the cyclists, and this is the cars. This is in the system itself, and this is the combustion energy, and this is public transport. And this is the direct damage to the atmosphere. There's also no solution with electric cars. I will show you. These are different kind of modes. If you see it here, this is walking and so on and so on. And probably this red line maybe is the threshold in the future on which the nature will react. If we compensate or try to be not so harsh to it, this line can be used also. But you see all the other vehicles, which are the cars and something like that, don't fulfill the needs of the future. And this is the electric cars here. Yeah, this is electric car. And this is greenwashing. Because in the electric cars you have such a high amount of energy for the production and the maintenance and all the things that we are always talking about the difference in the electric cars here. We are talking about this difference, but we are blind for this one. And the car industry is extremely happy that they were able to focus all the views of the politicians and the people to this section, but they don't tell us the truth. And this is the truth. It's not my diagram. And you see, this is don't work in this way. This is the next one is the speed. So we know there is no growth of mobility. Number of trips is constant. The second one are two speeds which we are familiar with. This is walking and running. And it's interesting in 1965, in British they had this kind of locomotive law or red flag act. And the speed limit was in urban areas 2 miles per hour. It is about this size, this dimension, and on rural areas it was 4 miles per hour. This red flag act was valid between 1865 and was finally stopped by the car owners and car clubs representatives in 1896. And since this time, the speed was more or less open. There were times where they had no speed limit in urban areas, no speed limit in rural areas. And after they have recognized that a lot of accidents are appearing, then they tried to implement some speed. So finally, the British came to 30 miles per hour. These are the 50 kilometers an hour we have taken over. There's nothing to do with real human abilities to act in this very fast system. So we are killing the people by using this kind of speed. So, but we calculate European Union, World Bank, and so on. I had very many discussions in the last 50 years. Even in the United States, you cannot believe that this is not true, because they calculate the benefits of speed by connecting 2 points A and B with a faster transport system, A and B, a low speed, and then we have to improve it by a fast speed. And then we calculate the situation by using this kind of formula. This is the length between the speed difference and speed 1 by speed 2. And then we multiply this time savings with the money, which means euro per hour or something like that. And this is, goes then in the cost-benefit calculations. This is normal behavior. World Bank is doing it, nationalists are doing it, European unions are doing it, especially the English are doing it. And transport engineers are very eager to keep the system very fast. This is the density, this is the basic formula. These are vehicles per hour. This is vehicles per kilometer, and this is kilometers per hour. This is the normal mobility formula. And if here congestion appears, which means the density is increasing and the speed is decreasing, then the politicians and the people and the engineers become very nervous, and they said, well, we must build a new road. And they do it. So density is going down if you have one more lane or one more road, and speed is going up, and then they are very happy. But what they don't know is the other system effects, because if the density is going down, the system is becoming more attractive and attract more people to go into the car part. So you have more cars now in the system, and if the speed on the local situation or local area is increasing, it increases also a little bit in the system. And then you have more car kilometers in the system. This is exactly what transport planning is doing, since they are doing car traffic planning. And then you have finally more congestion. This is exactly how it works. There's a very nice background also for formula, but I don't present it. I think it's not a situation. So the working method is demand-oriented planning, and the effect is the exponential growth of problems. This is the consequence. But this was a discovery in the 70s, 80s. This is from service. This is the duration of the trips in a city. It was a city of about 50,000 inhabitants. And this is the percentage of trip length. So you can see 50% of the trips is about 8 minutes. And you see the pedestrians. Pedestrians have a speed from origin to destination of 3 kilometers an hour, and they only take this as a comparison. These are cars. They have a speed, average speed of 70 kilometers an hour. So you see they are 6 times faster. And if I draw now, this is the travel time distribution of pedestrians. And you would expect, if the cars are faster, they must be on the left side of the curve. But this is not the case. Travel time is a constant on the local level. And this is also a constant on the global level. This is a work which has been published much, much later, in 2000, by Schaffer et al., MIT and IASA. And you see on the horizontal axis, this is the income of the people. Here, this is the income of the people per year in 85, and this is the travel time budget. So all the travel time added up for these 3 trips in the average. And if our calculations would, on the left side we have the people, they have no cars, they have to walk. On the right side we have 500 and even more cars, and they have a very fast speed. And we would expect that we have this travel time budget. But this is not the case. Travel time budget is constant everywhere. So we cannot use a term which don't exist in the system to calculate benefits. If you use it, you make a lot of nonsense. And you spend a lot of money for nonsense. Not even for nonsense, but even for bad nonsense. So, travel time budget don't exist, but what is happening? If you increase this is our pedestrians, these are the cyclists here, pedestrians, cyclists, and this is the passenger car. This is the travel time, and this is the travel distance. So if you increase the speed, you destroy the small structures. And this is the small structure. On this speed, your historical city was built. And if you let the speed with the car, the individual car, into the system, so it destroys the system. From inside and from outside. Then the corporations, they control over the city. So, this we have already discussed a little bit. And here it is, again, this diagram, you know it already, it is a question of a value system. The question of the value system means what do you value more, life, environment, future, or funny car driving. Yeah. This you have to balance. There's a hierarchy of values, it's very clear, but we break all this hierarchy of values here in the system. So, this is number 2. No growth of mobility, no time saving by speed. Number 3, question of freedom. This goes now a little bit deep in our brain. This is the energy consumption for walking, for running 20 kilometers an hour, and you see you have to pay for it. Your brain tells you, be not so stupid that you have to run so fast. And then you have a negative feedback, which tells you you should next time organize your life a little bit better instead of making this crazy, dangerous run, because you have overseen the bear or wolf, whatever it is. So the survivors have learned this. So this is the use of energy if you drive a car. It is 1.6 to 2 kilocalorie per minute. But you can reach a speed of 100 kilometers or even more. So what is happening in your brain, you have the real impression, I need less than half of a slow walking pedestrian, but I have a power of 240 horsepower. And I can drive. This is happening in the brain. This is the virus effect. So the car takes the control over our brain. This is happening with the car. You see, you do 240 horsepower combined with 0.1 horsepower, and inside the man is happening that they need less energy. Here they have the full burden of energy for walking. And on the other side, he has less energy, but more access to high speed, to other places. And here he has only a normal speed of 4 kilometers an hour, or maximum 400 meters, 36 kilometers an hour. And what is happening here, this is an excursion to the evolution, human evolution theory and epistemology. If we start here with the atoms, the molecules, and so on, finally we end here with our technical society. And the cars is one invention of our technical society. We are very proud. This is an invention of our neocortex, and the neocortex is extremely happy that he could make this wonderful innovation. But the car has now activities very deep in the brain, in the oldest level, where the energy consumption is controlled every time, every nano pentosecond. We have here the fastest computer, otherwise we wouldn't survive. But the car is slipping into this part of the brain, and then it changes everything above it and change the values and so on. So the cars sit in the brain of the people, and then the cars tell us what we have to do. We have to make space for parking. Not for children, no, not for trees. We have to make space for parking. You can see it outside everywhere. The second one, he would like to have some playground, so you have to make space for driving. And if the people don't follow, they have to pay. So they have to make laws and money for cars. And this is our traffic code. From inside of the understanding of human behavior. It's not very nice. So this is what we have talked already. We have overfulfilled the demand for cars. Then we are wondering what they are doing. The people, normal people, are driving. We force them to drive. So the brain, the car goes into this situation, and then it controls, and everything what we produce, architects, engineers, and so on, is a product of the brain. So for me, it is very funny when I am going around and I know what was in the brain of the planners and the people which have made the environment and written the laws and something like that. It's always great fun to see what was in the brain. This comes out of the brain of the people. These two, shopping center. These two. These two. This come out of a brain which is controlled by the car. So you are not a human anymore. You are a car representative. Yeah. The laughing is very good because now you have understood it a little bit. So we don't see the reality because the car don't allow us to see like a human. Because this is a normal situation at my old institute. But if I appear with my walking tool, everybody would say this guy is crazy. But I am occupying the same space like here. But if you see this one, oh, it is necessary, we must make parking places. And you see, this is a cabriolet, and they can make a very fast walk through the city. The sun is wonderful, but I have only the problem, I stuck in the congestion. You can download the pictures from the Institute's website. And this is a test question also to the audience. What is wrong in this picture? And spontaneously, the car will tell you this guy is wrong in the picture. Because this is my space. And he make problems here because he take away the space from me. My students must understand, and the test is not so easy like here, that everything around me is wrong. But this walking tool is used globally today. These are colleagues, we have to take, well, this is a congestion problem, and this was the original sketch from 1975. This was a very wonderful Mercedes situation, you see. And this is an example from Thailand, from our colleagues there. So, what is happening now? We are fixed due to our evolutionary equipment to this wonderful car, if the car is close to wherever we are. And this is the power which fixes us to the car here. If the car is here, we accept the car by 100%, and we don't like to make other things. And if we have the public transport somewhere here, we see 300 meter away, only about 30% of people is going there. Remember the diagram from Germany. Remember the diagram from Germany, how it changed very quickly. Increase of car use and decrease of public transport use. This is exactly what you see here. But this is very well scientific and based. But if we remove the car from here, then the people accept longer walking distances. These are empirical data. This is not theory. These are empirical data carried out very often in Vienna, and we can use it very precisely for the recovery of railways and something like that. So this was used to recover the railway in South Tyrol, Vinschgau, which has very strong effects on the whole country on public transport. So this is a challenge for urban planners. We have to remove parking from every place of our activities. If you have parking here, you don't need working very close to your home. You need only working somewhere else with parking, shopping with parking, recreation with parking, and so on. So every car has about 3 to 4 parking places in the system. It's not only these 20 square meters, which I have shown before, or 10 square meters, it is 4 times more. So you destroy, with this system, public transport. This has already happened, or has happened. So I'm now going back to Ljubljana, and you have now a sharp eye, and you can recognize where is the mistake. I will help you a little bit. If you look here, what is happening here? This is the problem, and the connection with this one. As long as you allow this one, you have no chance for all your nice wishes for cycling, pedestrian, public transport, and so on, because this eats up the whole energy. The people are captured in the system because you can't take the people out of their skin. You have to remove the cars out of the city. So if you have a system understanding, we have to change the structure. This will change the behavior. It is a physical, legal, financial, organizational change necessary. It's not only the physical one. We say first the legal one, financial one, and the organizational one. This is a very, well, this is paradigm change. So this is, we have to reorganize. We have to take the cars outside of cities, villages, and so on. If you park them, then everything is coming back. Yeah. Because if you live somewhere, you need a work, and so on, and so on. And then the power is going to the people and not to the corporations. Okay? So, yeah, this is changing. And the implementation is very interesting. This is the formula of success. From experience, you have a success if you have experts, politicians, administration, and population, and media also. Media is important. So, the X are very important because X means independence and trust. If they are not independent, you cannot use the X for mathematical reasons, and you must trust each other. So you must believe or have a critical position to them, but you must trust them. This is my experience over 60 years of practical work. And if we would like to have a very good success, we would like to have one. And you see there are two figures more. There is one, these are the responsible people. These people are responsible. These people have influence, and then we have the media here too. So if you, let me say, we have independence and trust, and you have a zero here, you need only 1 0. It's not easy. Very high risk to fail. And I was very lucky in my many-year career that I had very often no, well, I had also some zeros. And that was useless to do something there. Okay, the probability is not very high. Okay, Vienna has done this story, is here, you can find it. If you go into the website of the city of Vienna, this was the beginning of the paradigm change in the city. But this was the most important thing was in 1994, one of my former students came in a position where he could do something. And you see what is happening. The people believe it was the €365 which changed the model share. This is the share of public transport, and here it is 39. And you see the €365 ticket has no effect. It was parking regulation which changed the situation. This was good. The €365 is good, but it has no system-changing effect because the system has already changed. But it was important. You cannot copy the €365 ticket without changing the structures. Okay, that's all what I want to what I could tell you because I'm running out of time already. And if you are interested, you can find some books, or even English, and this one by Rosato, and these textbooks, and so on and so on and so on. And thank you very much.